Can you hear me right now, Rory?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I just want to make sure it's blinking a Q&A and different things.
Yeah, we've got, welcome everyone. We've got about 110 people so far. We're just going to give it another little bit and just allow everyone who wants to come in. All right, so we are at about 6:01 and our numbers are starting to kind of even out. So I just want to, first of all, say good evening. My name is Rory Moore. I know most of you, pretty much everyone knows me, but just in case you don't, I'm Rory Moore. I'm the principal at Alberta Writer. And I want to introduce the folks that are on this the Zoom call with me. My office staff, we're going to be here answering your questions. So let's just go ahead and start. Ann, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Ann Lofton, and I am the head secretary, and I can't wait to see all of you again.
Thanks, Ann. Priscilla?
Hello, everyone. My name is Priscilla, and I am the Family Partnership Advocate for Alberta Writer. Buenas tardes a todos. Yo soy Priscila y soy la defensora del enlace familiar.
And Priscilla, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to remind everyone that if you need interpretation or if you want to listen to this presentation in English, please go to the interpretation button. Para todos los que hablan español, si quieren escuchar esta presentación en español, por favor, vayan al icono del mundo donde se les va a proveer esta presentación en español.
Thank you, Priscilla. Carol, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone. I'm Carol Tan. I'm the new staff in the front office, and I look forward to seeing you guys.
Thank you, Carol. We also have Carrie Ferguson, who is the principal at Templeton. We're partnering up in different schools, or partnering with each other. I'm partnering with her. She's going to be on the line as well. And just a little bit of trivia, Carrie taught at Alberta Writer, taught first grade. You want to say hello, Ms. Ferguson?
That is correct. Good evening. I'm glad to be here. Again, my name is Carrie Ferguson. I'm the principal at Templeton, and I started my career in Tigard-Tualatin at Alberta Writer. So it does hold a special place in my heart. I'm glad to be here.
We're really happy to have you here, Carrie. So tonight, you guys are going to hear a lot of information, and if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. The folks that we just introduced you to will be answering those questions to the best of their abilities. We're going to take all the unanswered questions that we have over the course of the evening, and we're going to work with some of our other principals and their buildings and create a frequently asked questions page that we will share with you. We're expecting to do that on Friday. Some of these community meetings are happening on Thursday evening, which will include Templeton. So, tonight we are going to share a lot of information with you. This meeting will be recorded. It is being recorded. We're going to post it on our website and we're going to send it to you. And the purpose of this meeting is to give you the information that you need to make a final choice for this school year around which model you want to select, hybrid or online. And that's just to finish the school year in that model. So there's going to have a lot of information coming at you. There was a lot of information that was shared last night at the school board meeting. So if you were able to attend, you will know the kind of big important stuff, but we're going to go into a lot of details so that you can make the best possible decision for your family. So a couple of things that I want to highlight from last night's board meeting is that TTSD has made the decision that they are committed to having all of its educators vaccinated prior to return, and that we have immunity from that vaccination prior to return. Dr. Sue announced that last night. The other thing is that kind of connected with that vaccine piece is that we're putting together a tentative timeline for the middle of March. And that is assuming that the vaccine rollout goes according to plan. What I can tell you is that we were able to start signing up teachers for vaccination as of this afternoon. And there are people on our staff who are already signed up to go as early as tomorrow for their first shot. So that puts us in a really good place. I want to just, first of all, before we kind of dive into these details, I fully recognize that we're asking you to make a decision now that will not directly impact you or your child for weeks. And that's very difficult. So I'm dedicated, as is our staff, to do this the best possible way so that we can keep everybody safe and so we can maximize learning opportunities as we finish this school year. And to do that, we need to know what families are thinking and planning so we can plan. I am completely sympathetic to the challenges and the frustrations that this has caused over the past year or so. And I want to be as transparent as possible about my limitations on what we can and can't do, what we can and can't say at this point in time. So again, I'm completely empathetic with how hard all this has been on everyone, on our children. I want kids back in school as soon as possible, and I'm doing everything I can to make that happen. So this is the last thing. The way that our families, the way you have managed this is nothing short of inspirational. And I want you to know that we recognize the sacrifices that you've made this year, and we're going to try to make this school year finish the best way possible. Okay, let's get into the details. So our first couple of slides. All right, this is our agenda. We're going to talk about context and goals for this, for the rest of the year. We're going to talk about a half-day schedule, social emotional learning. We're going to talk about health and safety. We're going to go into some details about what the online or CDL option will look like, how you enroll, what that looks like, and then we're going to talk a few more details about tentative timeline, which I already started to do. So, next slide, please. So before we get into all this, I want to just draw your attention to some key dates that have impacted the rollout of this plan. First and foremost, in August of 2020, we were given state metrics around when we could open up, and those metrics were mandatory. We had no flexibility about bringing kids in person, and we had to follow them, so everyone started the school year online, hoping that we would bring kids back in pretty soon. Right before Halloween, there were new metrics that were released that were significantly more flexible than what we had received in August. And we thought we'd be able to move back in sooner as a result of that, but case counts continue to rise as the weather got colder. Then right before Christmas, right the day before Christmas Eve, the governor made an executive decision to shift all metrics from being mandatory to being advisory. So we could make local decisions about what our school districts are going to be doing, which is a very big change and something that took a lot of preparation to get ready for. The last key date that we have is on January 19th, just a week or so ago, they released even more guidance around these metrics and around reopening schools that made it a lot easier for us to come back and to be really kind of connected with the latest updates with the science. Next slide, please. So the context of these decisions that we're making, the context of this plan that I'm going to share with you is we want to think about equity and safety. Equity being that we are giving kids and families what they need to access school and be successful, and then safety to make sure that everybody is safe. That includes all of you. That includes, of course, our children, and it includes our staff. So if we can keep kids safe, we can keep them in school and learning as best to our abilities and as best way possible. We are completely committed to bringing kids back to school in a hybrid model. We are also committed to ensuring that you have an online option if you are not comfortable coming back to school, or if you have a circumstance that makes it extremely difficult for you to come back into physical school. So our hybrid return, based on the guidance that the governor had changed in October, is 350 cases per 100,000 people in the county. Washington County was at 333 cases per 100,000 as of last week. That is a downward trend from where we're at, and it looks like we're continuing to head in that downward trend. Next slide, please. I want to draw your attention to this graphic. Because this is being recorded, this might be something that you want to pause on if you just want to dial into it and look at it. The other thing about it that I should have also shared in the previous slide is that not only are we beholden in terms of these metrics to, if we're to follow this guidance from our health experts, not only beholden to the data in Washington County, we're also beholden to the data in Clackamas and Multnomah County. As a school district, we have schools in Clackamas County, and more than 10% of our workforce lives in Multnomah County, and we have to be responsive to that. So the guidance is significantly different than it was in August, and it's basically, I think, 3.5 times easier for us to come back in terms of what the case count was. The guidance is about keeping kids safe, and so we're going to follow it, even though it allows us, we're now allowed to make local decisions. We're still going to stick with that guidance. That's what Dr. Seuss said at our school board meeting yesterday. Next slide, please. So our goals for those returning in person are to continue to develop peer and adult connections, which is easier to do in person, to relearn school routines, which will be a little bit different than what they were like prior to when we shut down, going to the bathroom, navigating the hallway, all these things will be different. So that we can keep kids safe, making sure that we can keep kids 6 feet apart, making sure kids are doing things like wearing masks, making sure that kids are not making unnecessary trips to be around other kids that are not part of their cohort, all those things. We're also really focused on increasing engagement and academic achievement. So to put it another way, we're still focused on a lot of these things for CDL, for kids online. We want to make sure they're building connections. We want to make sure they are engaged, and we've been doing a lot of professional development around that as a staff. But for in person, it is a little bit easier to make these things happen. Next slide, please. So we landed on a half-day model for our return, which is a little bit different than the 2-day hybrid option we'd originally planned for in August. And to be very transparent about why, we found that there were a lot more advantages to doing a half-day model educationally. And first and foremost, kids are dependent on routines, especially little kids. And so we want to make sure that we're providing them a consistent routine that they can learn and be very predictable on. They're going to be around their teacher more often. There's going to be more opportunities to check in to make sure that kids are being held accountable to the things we want them to do. And they're also going to be motivated and building deeper relationships with their not only their classmates, but their teacher, which is going to increase learning and connection to our school. Also, it is very difficult to teach routines around all these health and safety protocols that we've talked about if a child is only in school 2 days a week. It's very challenging because they need frequent reminders and practice. And so the other thing is the half-day rationale is that we're able to keep a similar pace with our curriculum and with our instruction to what we've been providing with 100% online. So it'll mitigate some of the disruption. If we were having kids in just full 2 days, it would be very challenging to have 3 school days where we're expecting them to work independently, or for you as parents to be their teacher on those extra days. It doesn't work as well. So this pace is a much better option than having 2 full days in building. Next slide, please. So what this will look like is that every class will be split into 2 cohorts, a morning cohort in which kids will arrive at between 8:10 and 8:25, but the day will start at 8:25 and it'll go till 10:55. Same thing with the afternoon. 12:25 to 2:55 is our plan. So all classes will be on the same schedule, K-5. Although I'll get into this in a little more detail, but we'll be returning first with pre-K, which we don't have at Alberta Rider, but pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade will be the first students back in our buildings. Next slide, please. So the half-day structure would be in-person half-days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The Wednesdays would be exactly as they are now, with an 8:30 online meeting, a class meeting followed by independent work. So let's go to the next slide. The half-day schedule would involve a teacher teaching 1 group of students at a time. Classes will not be live streamed, as in a student will not be sitting at home watching their teacher teach physically in the building, while half of their classmates are learning in the building and the other half are learning online. What we found in consulting with, even just learning from some private schools that we had talked to, is they originally thought that was a really workable solution. And many of them that we've spoken with, that I've spoken with, and this is more just sort of on my own, this didn't work. It didn't work very well. What ended up happening was the teacher had to give a lot of attention to the students directly in front of them, and the kids online did not get as much attention. And it was just a very disruptive model and very challenging for the teacher to put together. So while students are at home, they're going to complete independent work, which we'll provide. And they also will be able to do small group interventions if they are in a reading intervention, if they're in special education, if they're in English language, if they're an English language learner, and they will also have the opportunity to do asynchronous PE and music specials, which they have now. That will be an afternoon activity. Okay, next slide, please. So some key details for you guys to think about. We will have a short recess every day, probably about 10 minutes, so kids can get some exercise, so they can socialize, be outside. We are not at this point able to use the play structures just for sanitation purposes, but that doesn't mean we can't put kids on our new track or have them run around the field or have them run around the covered play area. And possibly we're thinking we might have access to the gym as well. There's some things that we need to figure out with that. But we want kids to get outside and talk to each other and have as normal of an experience as possible. When it comes to supplies, we will give you more information on what the supply list will be. But one thing we do know is that we cannot share supplies at all. So kids will not, there'll be no communal supplies at all. And they'll keep some supplies at home. They'll have some at school. We are wanting kids to bring their iPads home, to school and home daily, because we're still using Canvas as our gradebook and our primary way to push out a lot of our assignments. That will definitely be true for virtual learning, and we will need that resource for in-person instruction for some things, although that might look a little bit different. The transportation for buses is we're going to be kind of busy at Ryder, because we're going to have groups being dropped off in the AM and picked up, and then we're going to have another group being dropped off and picked up. So there will be bus routes. There'll be a lot of action in our parking lot at 4 different times in the day as opposed to 2. Next slide. What we're looking at right now, we're still going to be cohorting kids, and we are going to be prioritizing balance, which is something that we do in all cases, making sure that we don't create a class that is too difficult or more challenging for the teacher to meet the needs of all the kids in that class. So we're going to be thinking about balance, but as a rule of thumb, we are looking to have A through L be in the AM, and we're looking at M through Z being in the PM. That might create some challenges logistically for our families, which we completely recognize. And so it's possible that we can make an exception, but it's going to be extremely difficult to do that, and I cannot guarantee that we can make an exception. If you have a significant challenge, you can reach out to me, but I want to be really upfront that I have no idea if I can meet that request. I just don't know. So much of it depends on what our families decide, how much change we have based on this new sort of question we're asking you. And so I want to be very clear. I cannot guarantee you that I can accommodate your request, even if it's an extremely valid one. So I don't like saying that. That might automatically cause some stress, but it's just the reality of where we're at right now. Meals will be provided to students, breakfast and lunch, but we are not having a mealtime at school. So what that means is we're asking for kids to eat at home prior to coming to school, whether it's breakfast or lunch. Now, if a child needs lunch or breakfast, we will provide it. And so, for example, if they come in the morning, we will give them breakfast and lunch for that day that they will eat at home when they get home from school, and then they'll eat breakfast in the morning. For students that have lunch that need lunch or are coming in the afternoon, they will get lunch and breakfast for the next day when they leave the school building. That creates a lot of logistical simplicity, or makes things more simple when it comes to our logistics, and it allows us to keep kids safe, because one of the best ways to spread COVID, unfortunately, is when people are, even if they're 6 feet apart with their masks off, eating. And so we want to avoid that as much as possible. Next slide, please. This is what our schedule looks like. This is what we're planning on going with. This has been shared with the teachers. They're aware of it. Essentially, cohort A, which right now would primarily be A through L, would come in. They would come in and start, and they would do a class meeting just like they normally do. That class meeting would include students that are just in cohort A. Normally, the whole class is in a class meeting. Cohort B students would have their class meeting when they arrive in the afternoon. We would then do reading, a quick recess, math, and then we transition home. Students that need meals would get meals as they leave. Wednesdays, being that they're the same schedule as we currently have on Wednesdays, the whole class would come together again for that class meeting on Wednesday. So, we're gonna do one more slide, and then we're gonna pause. Just wanna check in with Ann and see if we've got any questions. Something that I think is really, really important to highlight and identify is that social emotional learning, or SEL as we call it, is a foundational piece of what we've been doing at Alberta Ryder this year, and we really kind of started to do it last year, even prior to COVID happening. The research around giving kids the opportunity to build community, to share what's going on with them, and to explicitly learn, all kinds of things around, like I said, social emotional health has been something that is crucial right now with the current state of our whole world. And so it's a priority that we're going to maintain moving into hybrid instruction. And it's a priority that we're going to maintain for kids who are on CDL. We hear over and over again the stories in the news about how kids are struggling emotionally right now, and we can't let up. We need to make sure that we are providing this support for as many ways as possible. And so every kid will be part of that class meeting. They'll have a chance to share, to feel connection. And as far as for kids that have even more significant needs, there's a process to do that. We have teachers that can ask for help based on conversations they have with you, that could go directly to our counselor psych, possibly to our special ed department, just depending on the needs. Also, Priscilla being our family partnership advocate. So there's levels of support that can and will happen for kids based on their needs and on their family's needs. And there's a lot we can do for that. And if you have questions about it, please reach out to us if you feel like you need some help. So I want to pause there just for a moment. Anne, are there any questions that are coming up in the Q&A that you feel like are themes that I should address right now?
There are two things. One, the first one, I think you were a little bit vague on how breakfast and lunch are going to be not eaten at school, though you did say that breakfast would be eaten there at one time. So if you could clarify that a little bit and walk people through that. And then maybe there's a few people that are asking or making comments about us coming back and being with students so little, the teachers. It sounds so much like 100% online. Why are we doing this? And I think that's the social emotional health. Could you talk about that just a bit?
Sure. So the first question is around lunches and breakfast. So what we want is we're not going to have a scheduled time to eat on our daily schedule. And the reason for that is logistically it's very challenging, and it's also not the safest thing to do in a classroom or in a space like that. So we're providing meals for kids who need them. So if kids need lunch or breakfast, we'll provide them. But what they're going to do is they're going to leave with their meal when they leave school. And so if they pick up lunch, if they come in the morning, then they are going to, when they leave, they're going to take today's lunch and tomorrow's breakfast with them. So they can eat the breakfast before they come to school that we give them that afternoon, and they can eat that lunch as soon as they get home. For kids that are coming in the afternoon, they will take tomorrow's lunch and tomorrow's breakfast with them, which is something that it will be in a sack lunch, grab and go type of situation. So they can just have it and bring it home and then refrigerate it or keep it at their house and then eat it right before they come, and then when they return back. The why about return to in-person, this is the part that is going to be a challenge for everybody to make up their own decision around why they would or wouldn't come back. And so for kids in general, in-person has more power because of the ability to build connections with teachers and peers. Learning is social. And so it is difficult to do that online, although not impossible, as we have seen. We've seen a lot of really positive things from our teachers and from our families this year. So if you feel like your distance learning class is going well, then I would encourage you to stay put if you feel like that is the best option. But if you're someone that believes firmly that being in person is a higher quality education, then you should send your child back if you are not worried about all the things involved with our safety measures and just being safe in general with the reality that we're dealing with. So that's completely your decision. And I would say, by and large, I believe, and we don't have, a ton of research about this, but by and large, in-person instruction is more beneficial to kids overall for most kids than online is. And that's why there's such a strong push to get kids back in the schools. Okay. Let's move to the next slide, where I'm going to talk about health and safety a little bit more. First things first, that is a bus full of mascots, if you are wondering. And so we have made a video as a district, which included all of our mascots. Bolt is kind of a superstar in the district, as you guys already know. You can probably see Bolt in the bus. And so we're gonna create a video that's gonna come out fairly soon, and we're gonna send it out to our families. And the point of it is to be a kid video for kids to watch, so they can see a lot of these safety protocols sort of being acted out by our mascots. So everything from the 6 feet apart to what's gonna be like on the bus to mask wearing, all those things. So that's what this picture is, and we'll talk about it a little more, and we'll give you a preview. So first thing that I wanna be really clear about, that if before you come to school, we're asking families to conduct a daily symptom screening at home. So if a child has any symptoms of COVID-19, we're asking for them to stay home. If they come to school, they will also get a screening when they get on the bus or before they enter the building. If they will get screened before they get on the bus. If they don't take the bus, they'll get screened before they walk in the door. If they have symptoms of COVID, then they will not be able to come into school that day. We'll have to send them home. If you or somebody in your household has a positive test for COVID-19, we also need you to keep your child home until we know that it's safe for them to return. We are requiring all adults and all students to wear masks at all times while being inside the building. That isn't something that we can budge on. We are also doing frequent hand washing throughout the day to make sure that kids are staying safe. We know that's one of the best things that you can do to prevent the spread of COVID-19. So we will ask kids to wash their hands when they come in the room and just at frequent times throughout the day. We're also going to be doing some explicit teaching of all these routines right when we come back in. And then also, just to be very clear, buses, classrooms, everything, bathrooms, they're going to be sanitized between AM and PM cohorts so that we are mitigating and minimizing any risk that could happen to your children. Next slide, please. This slide is simply just the exact same slide that I shared in Spanish. And so I want it to be displayed just for a little bit, even though I shared all this information, but just in case in the recording someone would like to read it, I want that to be available to them. Okay, next slide, please. So here are more mascots looking silly, but they are masked up. They've got the barriers in between, which we're going to have inside our classrooms. All cohorts will be basically half of your current class, or of a class size. We're going to have 35 square foot in each classroom per student. Students will have individualized, not shared supplies. As I said, there's the barrier there. Students are going to sit at their desks. They're not going to be sitting on the carpet. They're not going to be sitting on anything like a pillow that couldn't be cleaned and sanitized. That's a requirement from the state guidelines. This student-friendly video will provide a visual for this, among a lot of other things. And I want to again remind you guys that we will be having a frequently asked question sheet that we're going to be completing after all these meetings are over, so that we can comprehensively answer any questions that we're not able to answer tonight or that we haven't thought through to make sure that we're giving you as much predictability as possible. So next slide, please. Again, this is the one that's in Spanish for the same slide that we had before. That is the famous Charlie Paws of CFT Elementary. He's no Bolt, but he's trying. Okay, here is the video. Let's go ahead and watch the preview of it, not the whole video. This is about a minute of the preview. So that was filmed yesterday. They're going to edit it and send it out shortly. I don't know exactly when, but soon. This is the kind of video we want to show kids just to give them some idea of what we're asking them to do, so it helps them feel a little bit more safe and secure, and so that they have a pretty good idea of what school will look like for themselves. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to share some just information about our process if a child becomes positive with COVID-19. So if a child in your child's class has a confirmed case of COVID-19, then that cohort would need to quarantine for 14 days. To be really clear, like the A and the B next to each other represents a close contact, which would be a child sharing classroom space for that amount of time. So we would cohort it. Same thing would be true for a bus. So you will have bus cohorts, and if there's a kid on your child's bus that has a confirmed case of COVID-19, then that whole cohort would have to quarantine for 14 days to make sure that they were healthy and not spreading it in our school. One thing to also understand is that close contact is what triggers the quarantine. If you have a child on your bus who is in a classroom with a kid who has a confirmed case of COVID-19, your bus doesn't need to quarantine. You don't need to quarantine just that one specific child. So that might be a little confusing. The way that I would think about it is if I'm working in my office and Anne is in my office and Anne gets positive with COVID-19, I would technically have to go home and quarantine, as would Anne, obviously until she was better. But let's say I want to do a classroom and talk to a teacher, but I don't have a confirmed case of COVID-19, that teacher would not have to go home unless they showed symptoms and tested positive, then they would. So the same thing is true with children. If we could go to the next slide. This is a lot of words and a lot of information. And so what I would like to do instead of kind of going into the details is I think it's a really helpful visual if you guys have time to go and read this if you're confused. If you're not confused, then ignore it. But this goes into a lot of detail, kind of saying the same type of things that I've said. So in the recording, I would pause it on this slide if this doesn't make sense. And of course, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section because I think it's a really important thing to be aware of. Next slide. Okay, so 100% online. We are still committed to providing that option, just like hybrid, for the end of the year. The classes, if you stay online, are likely and may include your teacher, likely to include your teacher that you currently have. That's what we're hoping for. Same with the peers that you currently have. But we cannot 100% guarantee that right now because we don't know what our families are going to do. And so that is something that is probably the hardest piece of news to share with you, is thinking all I want is my same teacher go and do the exact same thing that we've done. We all know how important relationships are. I wish that I could tell you that will absolutely happen, but I cannot guarantee that with 100% certainty right now. I need to find out what parents are doing. So we will attempt to maintain consistency the best that we can for families in online and for families choosing to do hybrid, but there might need to be some adjustments with the online class, just like there might need to be adjustments with some of our hybrid classes and our hybrid teachers. Next slide, please. So enrollment, everyone, pretty much all of our families are already enrolled in ParentView, which is great. This is how you're going to enroll and make your final decision. The deadline is February 8th, so you have about 2 weeks to do it. As I said before, classes and teachers may change even for families that choose to do the exact same thing. And for families who are choosing to do the exact same thing, we still need you to go in there and we still need you to confirm that that's what you want to do. We are going to do our very best to maintain consistency for everyone. That is a priority of mine, and I want to do it. I want to do it if I can. The only reason why we would change is because we have no other choice. It's not because I think it's a good idea or something that will benefit. It's just a way to make this work. That is my 100% honest answer. So let's go to the next slide. So just to be reminding you about ParentView, you should have already, like I said, I think there's only a handful of parents who don't have ParentView accounts at Alberta Rider. There is a link on our website under the fast links. You click on that, you log in. Again, we need you to complete this process even if you don't want to make any changes. So you'll be able to select which model that you want, hybrid or online. If you're coming in, you'll have transportation options, which we'll show you here in a second, and meal options. So Anne, why don't you go to the next, or sorry, Thor, please go to the next slide. This is one of the first things that's going to come up, and I want to be really clear. You need to select hybrid or 100% online is the first step. Don't go to student enrollment. Your child is already enrolled in our school. They're already enrolled. So going there will create just some confusion. And to me, that's the most confusing thing about going into Parent View. So go into hybrid or online. On Parent View, select that. Next slide. You'll choose which one you want, and then you'll be asked these questions as well. Are you going to do bus, daycare bus, on-site daycare, all these different things we want to know so that we can make plans around the best ways for kids to come in and out of our building at the beginning and at the end of their school day. Next slide. And of course, we want to know the meals so we can plan accordingly. So we will have meals for any child that needs one, breakfast and or lunch. All right. I believe this is the last slide. So here are the key timeline things I started mentioning before. Pre-K 5 teachers should be vaccinated by mid-March. And so our goal is to be back by then. As I said earlier, there are Alberta Rider teachers and staff members who have scheduled an appointment for this week. And that is a good sign that we're on track to meet this deadline. We are going to start with our youngest kids. Pre-K, we don't have pre-K at Alberta Rider, but district wide we do. So kinder and first, and our target date, mid to late March. After we have them back in solidly, we will do a 2-3. We will go with 2-3 and 4-5, and they will come in incrementally. I don't have the exact timeline for how much distance will be between when K1 returns and when 2-3 returns. There will be some space in between. That is still being finalized at the district level. I don't know that at this time. Some of those preliminary conversations were a week or two, but I don't know what it's going to be. Be very transparent. We will share with families if what their cohorts are, which might be changed, or maybe it'll be exactly the same for you. Maybe your same teacher and most of your same peers. We will share that the 2 weeks before kinder and first grade come back, and we will make a change for all kids that are changing on the day that kinder and first come back. So if they come back on the 15th, if kinder and first come back on the 15th, and you have a fifth grader that was in hybrid at the start of the year and you want to move them to online, then that change will happen the same day that K1 comes back. We are doing that because we want to be consistent and minimize confusion to folks, knowing full well that this is going to be confusing. We don't normally make these kinds of changes, obviously, in the middle of the school year. And so we want to make this as predictable as possible. Okay.
Hey, Rory, this is Carrie.
Yes.
There's a couple questions that are coming up pretty consistently that you might be able to address now. If one of them is the protocol around kids refusing to wear a mask.
Yeah, there are very rare exceptions where kids are unable to wear a mask. That is if there is a medical reason, and typically kids in that situation are in special education, and there are protocols for dealing with that we would exercise through a learning special education case manager. If there's a typical child that doesn't want to wear a mask, the expectation is they'll wear a mask if they're going to be in school. And that is something that was explained to us as very, very tight. There is not a lot of wiggle room with that. And so that might be a criteria in thinking through whether or not the hybrid option makes sense for your child. That is just the answer with that question, unfortunately. Carrie, was there anything else?
Another question that's come up a couple times is specific description of how the cleaning of classrooms is going to happen between cohorts.
Specific cleaning. Well, so we are going to sanitize. We will clean off, all the areas and sanitize all the areas that include, where kids sit and their desks basically will be cleaned with a district approved sanitizer that has a certain degree of effectiveness. I don't have those exact stats memorized or the specific brand, but there are very clear protocols around exactly what type of product we can use so that those areas will be cleaned. Each kid will also have their own divider unique to them. And so they will have that, and then we'll put that up. We'll put that up when kids come back. We'll also be cleaning touch points around the school. Blake Gauman, who's our day specialist, his priority is going to be cleaning. And so in other times, he spends a lot of time in the cafeteria cleaning. And part of the reason why we're not having meals at school is that he's available to clean bathrooms and to help with classrooms and make sure that, like I said, touch points are very, very clean. One benefit that we've learned and that the guidance hasn't changed on this from the state, is that COVID is spread primarily through breathing and droplets, not from these touch points, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to be extremely diligent around doing that after cohorts, before they get here, at night, all that stuff.
Excellent. There was a question about the schedule. I'm not sure what slide it was on. Someone thought there was 45 minutes for math in the morning and only 15 in the afternoon. And if it shows that way on the schedule, then it's incorrect. So I don't know if we want to go back to that slide and just make sure if there's a typo in there.
I'm looking at the printout, and that is that is a typo in there.
Okay.
Because recess on that schedule is 45 minutes, and that's not going to happen. Sorry.
Okay.
So that is a typo on the slide. Sorry about that. I did not see that. That will get fixed. That is not accurate. Thanks for bringing that up, Carrie.
Yeah, good. Well, no, that was one of your really good parents that caught that. I didn't notice that they did. So thank you for finding that.
Thank you. Absolutely.
I'm trying as best I can to go through these questions. Anne, was there one that you saw that you?
Yeah, I had two other ones that I had written down. One person asks, what are you doing for special ed students and for other interventions?
Well, we are still obligated to implement everything connected with federal law around IDEA for special ed students. So we are going to follow every child's individual education plan. We are going to have to be re-looking at our intervention schedule to make this work, to be fully transparent. Right now, we have a lot of interventions in the afternoon. We have some on Wednesdays during the day where a lot of kids are not in live instruction or would be in class. That will probably be true, but because this will be very disruptive in terms of scheduling, we're going to have to relook at that. But we are obligated to fulfill everything that is in a child's individual education plan. And if for some reason we think we need to make a change, then that needs to be a decision made by the IEP team, which would include the parents. And so we have two excellent learning specialists, and Christy Waples and Brooke Mowry. Our counselor psych is on top of it. And so what I can say is we will make sure that we are meeting the needs of every child in special education.
Okay. One other question was, if their child had tested positive to COVID, but 7 days later they're tested negative, why can't they come back at 7 days?
So an individual child, there are specific criteria around that is not as restrictive as the 14 days, but for the cohort, it has to shut down for 14 days because it's possible that one of those children was exposed. And then if they come back, they could get everybody, sorry, not just exposed, they are exposed, but that they could be contagious and spread to the rest of the cohort. And so that cohort would need to shut down to protect the other kids in the cohort. It's possible that there's a child that has COVID-19. They're clear, they technically could come back, but that doesn't mean their cohort would be ready to come back or their class would be ready to come back.
And that the other ones I believe will be answered in the question and answer page that comes out on Friday.
Agreed. And we can share, and there's already some of that stuff in the frequently asked questions that we're organizing. I think that those criteria around quarantining and all those different pieces they're a little confusing at first, but then once you kind of dig into them, they sort of make sense. But we're more than happy as an office staff or me personally to walk you through it. We want to make sure you understand it and feel confident that you understand it so that you can make the right decision for your family and really for our community, because we really are all in this together. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I'm just wanting you guys to know I'm getting a text from my teammates. Those slides will be fixed for the next school. Metzger, I think, is in 15 minutes. They will have that complete. So thank you for fixing that for Metzger and the other 6 schools that are going to be doing these presentations. But I want to say, just to close, I know there's still a lot of questions. I know that for each family, they're going to have to make an individual decision. And for some people, this is going to be really easy, and for some people, it's not. And we completely respect that. And reach out to the people that you trust if you want to consult with somebody. We're here. Your teachers are here. They understand this. They understand these options and these plans very well. And we want to do everything we can to support you. This has been a very challenging year for everyone. And we want to finish it in the strongest way possible. And that is our goal. We are here to support you. We care about you. We care about your children. And we don't want you to feel like you're making this decision alone if you need help or just a thought partner. So thank you for coming tonight. We will send this recorded video out tomorrow. It'll be on our website, and we will send a FAQ out as soon as it's done. The goal is for it to be done Friday, but we want to have the input from the other schools and families and communities as well, so we have a really comprehensive list. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.